I'm sexy, and I know it.
And now, live from Las Vegas, Nevada, coming in at 6'1" and weighing in at, your guess is as good as ours, the host of Get a Grip Business Radio, Paul Montelongo.
I want me some Paul Montelongo.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started.
Good afternoon, Las Vegas. Welcome to the Paul Montelongo Get a Grip Business Radio, where the American free enterprise system is encouraged, it is endorsed, and it is hard at work right here, where serial entrepreneurship is a way of life. We talk about what's real, what's profitable, and what works. We're on KLAV AM Radio 1230 here in the Valley, the talk of Las Vegas, and it is just an absolutely gorgeous spring day. I am your serial entrepreneur host, Paul Montelongo, and you can listen to the show live streaming on the internet by going to paulmontelongolive.com. Also, follow me on Twitter at Paul Montelongo and on Facebook at Paul Montelongo Fan. With me in the studio today is my guest co-host, Heather Vale Goss. Welcome, Heather. Glad to have you here.
Glad to be here, Paul. Thank you so much. I'm really excited. It's going to be an awesome show.
Good. I'm glad that you're here also. And I'm really excited about the guest that we have coming up for us this afternoon. A master of influence, and he's going to help us. His name is Stephen G. Jones, and he's going to help us understand, and our listeners understand, how to influence people in business and sales and marketing and in negotiations, how to know if somebody's lying to us. I mean, I'm really stoked about this interview with Stephen.
Yeah, me too. And Steve is a great interviewee. I've interviewed him before, and he has the goods, so
Good.
Feel free to ask him whatever.
Good. You can call toll free 866-820-5528, or the local Las Vegas number here is area code 702-731-1230. Ask me your business questions, your finance questions, and the questions of our guests today about influence, marketing, negotiation, etc. Give me your opinion on the topics of the show, and I'll tell you if your opinion is right or wrong.
Hey. Hey now.
Again, go to paulmontelongolive.com for live streaming video. On today's show, we're going to talk about the myths about selling. We're going to talk about whether or not somebody is lying to us in a negotiation.
That's important to know.
Or in a sales environment. The other key thing is here, because Steve is a master of influence and the strategies of influence, we're going to talk about how to get the most out of ourselves in any kind of business venture going forward. How to really tap into our own personal strengths to move forward and overcome the ups and downs and the peaks and the valleys of sales and being in business. Again, paulmontelongolive.com is where you can see the show live streaming on the internet. Something interesting that I thought we'd start the show with, to lead us into the interview here in a few minutes, are about selling and the myths, Heather, that people have about selling. For example, one of the biggest myths is that it takes somebody who talks a good game, that only people who can talk a good game can sell. Like, for example, when you're a kid, and you're like chatter.
Yeah.
So what did everyone around you say?
You're going to be a used car salesman.
You're going to be a great salesman. You're not going to be a doctor or a fireman.
Right.
You're going to be a salesman because you chatter. So I find the myth is that people think you have to talk a good game in order to be a successful salesperson. And I don't really buy that. I don't think fast talkers, in fact, I don't think fast talkers do as well in sales as people who are not the fast talkers, people who build the relationship, people who develop the rapport. Because especially now, I mean, people just go into, a sales environment and their antenna are up.
Yeah.
Right? It's like they're looking for what's wrong in the salesperson's presentation.
Yeah.
And so,
And it's those fast talkers that give sales a bad name. That's why people say, I don't like salespeople. They're thinking about that kind of person.
right. So someone who talks a good game or someone who talks a lot doesn't necessarily make a good salesperson. In fact, the key is a person who's a good listener. And that person who's a good listener is going to outsell faster any good talker or chatter, because they can listen, they can determine the needs of the buyer, the prospective buyer, they can find out the motivating points, the points of leverage on that prospective buyer, and they do that by listening rather than chatter, and talking over somebody or talking over the prospective client. You
What
agree?
about asking the right questions?
Well, yeah, they have to ask the right questions and then listen.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
I mean, asking the great questions is, well, it's great.
But not
what-
if you don't pay attention to the answer.
That's right. What are the responses I'm going to get from you that help me know what you want, that help me know what your motivating buying points are, that help me know how I can leverage the skills or the product or the service that I have to help you.
Right.
Right. It's like it's a win-win. Help me help you. The old Jerry Maguire line,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, nice.
Right. So one of the other myths that I find interesting about sales is that you have to be able to handle rejection in sales.
Don't you?
Well, to an extent, yeah. You have to be able to hear no
A
lot, and then you have to be able to move past that and understand that every no is one step closer
to the next yes.
to a yes, right? And so
Yeah.
it doesn't mean necessarily that you're that you're really looking for rejections, but you see rejection as a sign to get better in your sales presentation, as a sign to get better in your service, as a sign to talk in a different kind of way or listen more intently or ask better questions of your prospect so that you can actually help them.
Does it help to know what your ratio is so you know, okay, on average for every 3 no's I get a yes, so you got something to look forward to, or does it matter?
Well, no, it doesn't really. I think, the statistics say something like you hear 8 no's before you hear a yes, but I don't really buy that altogether.
Okay.
That's just a statistic. I mean, the guy who made that statistic up probably heard a bunch of no's, and he was just trying to make himself feel better, right?
Yeah.
Like he probably heard 400 no's, but he said, "I'll condense it down to 8. I feel great about myself." Right?
Yeah, because it wouldn't sound very good. For 400 no's, you get a yes.
Right. But the point is that, depending on the business, depending on how long you've been in the business, depending on your sales proposition, depending on your product and service, depending on the rapport that you build with people, you're going to hear fewer no's.
Right.
Also, if you're really trying to help people, if you're really trying to help your prospective customer and you understand what your prospective customer wants, you're going to get fewer no's.
Right.
You're going to get right to the sale much, much quicker. So, now, I don't really buy the whole ratio of, 7 no's or 8 no's or 400 no's or however many no's. It's like, know your customer. Know what motivates them. Know what moves them. And listen. One more myth here, and then we're going to go to break in a few minutes, in a minute, and we're going to talk about, we're going to bring Steve on because we're going to talk about this whole influence thing in sales, and that is that in order to succeed in sales, you have to have thick skin. That's a myth, a thick skin.
That kind of goes along with the nose because, I think that's what people think you need a thick skin to put up with all the no's.
Yeah, well, a thick skin, listen, you have to have a thick skin base. If you want to go by thick skin, by measures of thick skin, you have to have a thick skin in business anyway.
That's true, especially if you're an entrepreneur.
If you're an entrepreneur, you have to have a thick skin, which means you take the rejections or you take the downs, the valleys, and you turn them into positives for yourself.
Right.
It's like every experience is a learning experience.
For every down, there's an up.
For everyone.
Yeah.
And every event that takes place, you learn something from it so that the next event that's similar to it or that has similar characteristics to it, then you're able to manage that. So thick skin in terms of I don't let things get me down, or I don't let things get me, into a state of depression, or worse, make me quit.
Right.
Especially if an entrepreneur has a vision and they have a purpose behind that vision. The thick skin or being able to overcome the ups and downs or peaks and valleys of a business is beneficial. So yes, you do have to have a thick skin, but you don't have to have, that's not the only requirement in order to be successful with sales. By that, we just mean that you have to learn from the experiences, right?
Right.
Yeah. So in today's program, like I said, we have a guest with us today, and his name is Steve G. Jones. I'll bring him on in a minute after break here. But I want to ask him some questions. First of all, first of all, I mean, in our research, in our homework, we understand that he's a hypnotherapist, right?
Hypnotherapist. Yes, he is.
Yeah, say that 3 times fast.
Clinical hypnotherapist.
Right. However, the thing that most struck me is that there's a science behind all of this.
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
This is the science of influence. And anyone in business, any kind of business, you are in business to influence others, to buy your product, to buy your idea, to buy into your service, to hand you their hard-earned dime or dollar or $1 million, right? So you're in the business of influencing people to do that in exchange for what they determine to be of value. So in a moment, we're going to come back with our guest and discuss the science of influence right after these messages.
Now, here again, the host of Get a Grip Business Radio, Paul Montelongo.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
Welcome back to the Paul Montelongo Get a Grip Business Radio Show. You can follow us live on the internet at paulmontelongolive.com. Give me your thoughts, opinions, comments at Paul Montelongo Fan on Facebook, and also follow me at Twitter at Paul Montelongo. Call locally 702-731-1230 or toll free 866-820-5528. I am really excited. I have been excited the last few days since I met Steve personally to have him on my show here to talk about the power of influence in business. Now, Steve is a clinical hypnotherapist. In fact, Heather, why don't you tell us exactly who Steve is there for us?
Yeah, Steve G. Jones, he's a board-certified clinical hypnotherapist, and he's been practicing hypnotherapy since the 1980s. He's the author of 25 books and has created over 9,000 hypnosis audio recordings and 22 different online certification programs, which are sold in over 140 countries. He's been interviewed on CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, featured on Bravo's Millionaire Matchmaker, both as a hypnotherapist and a millionaire. Now he's here with us today on the Get a Grip Business Show. He's studied psychology at Harvard University, and he holds numerous degrees, including a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Florida, master's degree in education from Armstrong Atlantic State University, and a doctorate in education from Georgia Southern University. Thanks, Steve, for being here with us.
Hey, my pleasure.
Welcome, Steve. Glad to have you here. So the other day we met and we talked, and I've been reviewing your work and studying your work, and I'm really impressed. Hypnotherapy has this mystical perception, if you will, that it's kind of woo-woo stuff.
Right.
But what I've discovered is that there's a large body of physical science behind it. Talk about the physical science behind this strategy of hypnotherapy, please.
Well, hypnotherapy has been used by medical doctors and even dentists as far back as 150 years. I mean, the AMA started recognizing hypnotherapy in the 1950s when a thyroidectomy was done on somebody, removal of the thyroid without any painkillers whatsoever.
Wow.
No drugs, just hypnosis. So although they haven't officially recognized it, they did at a certain point realize that there's certain power of it. And so you have hypnotherapy being taught to psychiatrists and other medical doctors as a viable way to work with certain clients.
Okay. All right. So is it better... okay, this hypnotherapy thing, all right? So if I were to frame it into or call it something, identify it something that relates to us in the business world, right?
Right.
Would it be fair to say that it's the psychology of persuasion, the psychology or the strategy of influence?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
And that would be personal influence?
Yes.
As well as to others?
Right.
With others?
You're influencing yourself to be more powerful in the moment, programming yourself, and you're also influencing others to have certain perceptions of you, which are going to be powerful for you in a business setting.
Okay. So I have all these questions about it, right? It's like, that's why we're here. I have all these questions. Like, how powerful is it? Like, can anyone be hypnotized, right? Okay, and in fact, can I not be hypnotized? Can I not subject myself to that?
Well, hypnosis is sort of like electrical conductivity. Every substance is conductive. Every substance on the planet will conduct electricity. It's just a matter of how well they will do it. Metal does it really well, for example. Wood doesn't conduct electricity very well. So that's sort of like hypnosis. Everyone is suggestible, but some people aren't very suggestible. So Harvard and Stanford got together and created a scale of hypnotic susceptibility, they call it. I like the word suggestibility. But the scale of hypnotic susceptibility ranks everyone with a numerical rating, but everyone is on that scale somewhere.
Okay. So I'm going into a business meeting, and I'm going into some serious negotiations for my business. And obviously, I would like the outcome of those negotiations to be in my favor.
Right.
Right. So give me like 2 or 3 key steps that I need to think about in order to influence the outcome of that meeting.
Okay. Well, we get out of the world of hypnosis and we get into the world of neuro-linguistic programming when we talk about that. And oftentimes they're used together. In fact, the creators of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, are also interested in hypnotherapy, and vice versa. People who are interested in hypnotherapy are interested in NLP. So they kind of lend nicely to each other. So when we get into NLP, the techniques that we can use would be basic rapport building strategies. For example, you want to mirror someone. So if you're standing a certain way or your hand is in a certain position, I might do something similar to that in order for you to feel rapport with me. Now, you have to realize that a lot of people are keen to that. A lot of people know about that. They've taken basic sales techniques, training, and they're looking for that. So you have to be very careful to do it. I recommend building in a little bit of a delay. So if you move your hand, I'll move my hand slowly and not exactly when you do. And also keep in mind that it's like a mirror. So in a mirror, if you move your right hand, the mirror moves its left hand. So you have to keep that in mind. You're producing a mirror image of somebody. Another technique that's very powerful is anchoring. So if I want to anchor you to feeling that I am a very motivated person, then every time I say the word motivated, I will touch within a 1-foot radius of my solar plexus. So, for example, I'm talking about a lot of words, and then I'm saying, I really enjoy how everyone here is so motivated. And when I say the word motivated, I'm touching that area. What that does is creates an anchor between an association between the word motivated and me, sort of like Pavlov and his dogs. He could ring a bell and let them smell meat powder. Eventually, all he had to do was ring a bell. So I am creating that association subliminally without you even realizing it in your mind.
Okay. So this whole NLP thing, this is neuro-linguistics programming. If I get the
neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay, if I get the definition of that correct, it's like the science of arranging thoughts and actions in our head or externally to achieve a desired outcome.
I'm going to write that down for my next book. Yes, that is very succinctly put. I like that.
Okay, great. Yes. So, okay, I'm in this business meeting, and let's bump off of what you just said a minute ago. So I'm negotiating with a very savvy negotiator, a very savvy person on the other side who understands the elements of rapport, who understands the elements of mirroring and anchoring, etc. Right. So I'm in that meeting.
Oh boy.
And the moment I start in on that stuff, they're like, "Oh, this guy's just playing me."
Right.
So, all right. So, what are the advanced or elevated levels of this science of influence so that we can get the desired outcome on those meetings?
Okay, you have to go under the radar at that point. If you even think that they know what you're, and this is not about fooling people. This is about establishing a rapport because you're a good person and you have something good to share with them, and you want them to be on board with that. So you're not trying to trick them or get them to believe in something that's not real. You're just attempting to break through all that, the icebreaker stuff and really get to the heart of things because you have something quality to share with them. So we need to go a little bit more in depth with this. You need to start looking for their pulse, either on their neck or sometimes on their head, anywhere you can see their pulse. And
I got to tell you, the images in my mind is like, I'm negotiating with them. I'm looking at your carotid artery.
Yes, looking at your carotid. And then you
shake my hand so I can feel your pulse. All right, go ahead.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
But you need to get comfortable with this, so you practice with friends. So once you see their pulse, you can do something we call pacing. Pacing is something very powerful. So if I see your pulse and I see that it's going like this, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I can start doing something rhythmic with my hand on the table. Perhaps I'm tapping in the same rhythm as your pulse. That, at a subliminal level, at an unconscious level that you are not detecting, establishes rapport. I'm establishing physiological rapport with you. Suddenly, your subconscious mind, which is aware of your pulse rate, is realizing that this person's hand is moving in the same rhythm, at the same pace as that. That's what we call pacing. So you're going to feel a rapport with me because of that.
Like unconsciously or subconsciously?
Yes. You will not be consciously aware of it.
How long does it take?
It varies for people, but I would do it for at least a minute.
Okay.
And you can keep doing it. I mean, as long as it's not distracting them, tapping your hand here. I'm doing it, and you're probably catching it with your peripheral vision. It's not something that I'm doing blatantly. I'm just doing it like this. I'm doing it under the radar.
I'm just checking to see if your tapping hand
1
is
and 2. Make sure you have a pulse.
Coordinated with mine.
If my hand stops tapping, we have a real problem.
So we're in a negotiation here, okay? And it seems to be going well, let's just say, for example, right? But we know the elements of negotiation in any business arrangement are, you know what your outcomes are. You go into the negotiation knowing the outcomes that you want, right?
Yes.
This is not a guessing game.
Right.
I know that I want that prospective customer to do X, Y, Z. Right.
Yes.
So we're going along through the negotiations. Everything's fine. We feel like we've built the elements of rapport, and then all of a sudden, the negotiation turns south. It's like they get up, or they move in a different way, or they throw out an objection that we didn't think of, or they genuinely do not see the value of what we're presenting. Any of those scenarios.
Okay.
So as a negotiator with the elements or the science of influence, then how do we get back on track?
You need to segue into something we call leading, which is the whole purpose of pacing, actually. So I've paced your pulse, or I've paced something about you, something that you do. Maybe I've paced the pattern of your voice, and I've mimicked that with my hand, or by tapping my foot, or with my own voice. Maybe I'm pacing you that way. So once I've paced you for a while and established that subconscious rapport, then I can move over into what's called leading. I can lead you. So now I can start doing things, little motions, and I'm seeing if you're following along. Leading is better to do with mirroring. So I'm not mirroring you exactly, but I'm hoping you will mirror me. So I'm now taking charge. Once I've established that rapport through pacing, I'm going to do something with it. So I'm going to start moving my hand. I'm going to start scratching the back of my head, for example, or sitting in a certain way. And I'm going to see if you do it. Now, you could be doing it just because you want to mirror me, but hopefully you're doing it, and this can get very tricky if it's a back and forth thing, but hopefully you're doing it because you are now following along. I have now taken control of your physical body movements, and therefore some of your thoughts, because you are, and it's signified by the fact that you are now doing what I'm doing. So I have then pulled you back into the situation.
It sounds like you've possessed them or something.
Yes, I own your soul at this point.
I'm imagining that there are
of that,
folks in the audience that are saying that sounds really manipulative.
Well, you've got to, first of all, this technology can be misused, obviously, if it's in the wrong hands. But the premise of this is that you're a good person, and whatever you're promoting, whatever you're working with them on is a good thing. And you know that. You're not trying to trick them into anything. All you're attempting to do here is to get over that rapport thing, because there are so many business propositions that you know would be great for that person. And the only thing holding them back from their success, it's a win-win, and you know that. And the only thing holding them back from making this happen is they don't fully trust you. So you've got to bridge that gap. And this is very helpful when it's someone you have never met before and you want to just get through that. Okay, trust me, I've got a good thing. But the premise is that you've got something good and you're a good person. In the wrong hands, yes, this could be misused.
He's Stephen G. Jones. I'm Paul Montelongo, and my guest co-host is Heather Vale Goss. And we will return in a few minutes back to the Paul Montelongo Get a Grip Business Radio Show after these messages.
Get a Grip Business Radio. Call us with your questions at 731-1230. Now, here again, your host, Paul Montelongo.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
Welcome back, Paul Montelongo, Get a Grip Business Radio here at KLAV, Talk of Las Vegas, AM 1230. I am your serial entrepreneur host, Paul Montelongo. You can follow the show at paulmontelongolive.com, live streaming as we speak right now in the studio. With me is my guest co-host, Heather, and also
Hello.
Also, our guest, Steve G. Jones, Master of Influence and clinical hypnotherapist. I'm going to get that word right.
We'll have it.
before
We'll have it
over.
soon enough.
You know, before we continue, I want to go back to a couple of these myths about sales. We'll get your feedback on that. One of the myths about sales is that it's a numbers game. Now, the reality of it is, yeah, it takes numbers. It is a numbers game in terms of you have to meet numbers, set sales projections, call a certain number of people, reach out to a certain number of people.
400 no's to get a yes.
If that's the number, you
Write
know.
that down.
You know what? That's a really great point. How many no's does it take to get a yes?
It's
Steve?
so multifactorial. It'd be difficult to calculate per person, per situation, per sales call. Have they had coffee yet? You know, are they in a good mood? Who are they talking to?
Key sales question. Hello, have you had coffee yet?
No? Click. You're going to cause my no ratio.
Right.
to
But it
mess
is a
up.
numbers game in terms of, you know, we have to make a certain number of calls. But it's not a numbers game in the sense that you have to have a lot of contacts to make sales. Because if you're methodical about your sales, if you're on the right path, if you're building the rapport like we've discussed, if you're calling warm clients, if you have a great sales proposition, then those, quote, numbers, they reduce and your efforts are more direct, your efforts are more fruitful because you're doing the right things at the right time with the right people.
So you're saying it's about quality over quantity.
That's what I'm saying.
Nice.
That's right. Quality over quantity. All right. The other myth is that we come across is that sales has its inevitable or unavoidable ups and downs. And sales is subject to the economy, and sales is subject to the time of year, and sales is subject to
Location.
or whether someone had coffee or not. All right. So,
I do better with coffee, just personally.
don't we all?
Yeah.
But sales can be up and down, but you don't have to be subject to the up and downs.
Right.
Again, if you're doing all the things that you're supposed to be doing, making your regular phone calls, building the relationships, establishing the rapport, giving people something of value. So where I'm going with this is with the science of influence, like we've been discussing, this is all a mindset. Sales is a really big mindset. If I go into a sales environment saying, I hope they had their coffee, or
You don't want them to have had coffee.
right, or
You have the coffee.
or I'm only on call number 12. I've got 18 more calls to go before
Right.
I say, before they hear a yes, right?
Negative mindset.
Right, the negative mindset,
You
right?
killed it before it even started if you go into that.
Exactly. So then from that perspective, it's not an up and down game. It's a consistent game
Right.
based on our thinking. Having said that, with the science of influence, how do we train ourselves to have that consistent, methodical thinking about our success and our level of success through the quote unquote ups and downs?
Well, that's where hypnosis comes in, and that's where programming yourself comes in, and realizing that it's not all about the other person and what you can throw at them and how you can manipulate them or anything like that. A lot of it is about programming yourself for success, using hypnosis recordings, for example. You can make your own hypnosis recording and program yourself for success. You can get hypnosis recordings. You can work with a hypnotherapist. You can do something as simple as writing affirmations. People make fun of affirmations. You know, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me from Saturday Night Live. But it's
Stuart Smalley.
Exactly. But the truth is affirmations do work, despite the fact that it's kind of funny. So you can write them, you can take a black Sharpie, that's what I do, and write them on your bathroom mirror. So at least you see them before you go to bed, and in the morning you see them. Write 3 affirmations. Write them as if they've already happened, and write them very positively. And what you're going to find is that just like a song that you may not like gets stuck in your head, those affirmations get stuck in your head, and they're there for you at key clutch moments. So if you don't want to go through the effort of using hypnosis recordings, at least have exposure regularly to affirmations.
But what happens when, sometimes you'll have an affirmation like, I'm a great salesperson, and then your ego kicks in and says, no, you're not.
Right.
And then you got 2 voices in your head.
Right. And when I work with clients, I usually find in about week 3, they're sabotaging themselves. So it's weight loss, building sales, anything where their confidence is being built up. About week 3, they sabotage themselves. And that's because of a deep-seated belief that they're not worthy. They're not good enough. They do deserve not good things, and they don't deserve the good things. So
And that's a whole different issue.
that gets a little deeper, and that you may want
But you
to
can
work
coach
with.
somebody through that?
Yes, absolutely. I'm I'm used to that. I expect it actually in week 3. I look for it. And usually if I'm working with someone on weight loss, they'll start binge eating in week 3. And that's great because we get it all out. If I'm working with someone on building wealth, they'll gamble a lot of money away in week 3. It's very predictable.
Wow.
And the reason is their subconscious mind is kicking in because they're not comfortable with a lot of money. They're not comfortable with the attention they get with losing weight. They're not comfortable with whatever success that they're moving toward. They know that that can lead to negative attention.
They have to get back in their comfort zone.
Right, so they don't get hurt.
Right.
And so that's something that I would work with a hypnotherapist on. It's a little deeper than that.
If someone wants to record their own hypnotherapy,
Hey, wow,
recording
nicely done.
if somebody wants to record themselves, is what you're suggesting, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah,
like that created their own tape or their own CD, right?
Right.
How does that happen? It's like, because as far as I know, there are a lot of people that don't really like the sound of their own voice.
Well, if you don't like your own voice, don't do it. Just buy there's so many hypnosis recordings online. In addition to mine, there are just tons of them out there that you can use by professionals. But if you like your own voice or don't mind it, it's great because you can put your own information on that. And the way you do that is with a 5-part process. First, you do the induction, talk for about 10 minutes about something you enjoy, walking along the beach, and involve all the senses, something to see, something to smell, you feel the sand and so forth. Just talk about something you like doing for 10 minutes. Not anything exciting, just something that's relaxing and beautiful. Then the deepening, where you count backwards from 10 to 1, and maybe the sun setting as you're counting backwards. And then I'm hypnotizing you right now, by the way. You notice my voice is changing, Paul. And then you write me a check.
I feel my pulse and my neck going crazy, too.
Very nicely done. Okay, so then then the script comes. That's where you're programming yourself for change. You've got all the items, all the action items that you want to change about yourself, and you're putting them in there, and you're adding them at the script part. Then comes amnesia, and you may think, why would we want to forget the good things we've done? The reason that you add a part about you forgetting the hypnosis session is that so hopefully you don't overanalyze it in the daytime like we're talking about and sabotage it. Then comes transtermination, where you either tell yourself to wake up. It's not as scary as it sounds. You either tell yourself to wake up, 1, 2, 3, wake up, or you tell yourself to go to sleep and wake up in the morning, depending on whether you're making a daytime recording or a nighttime use recording that's going to put you to sleep and allow you to rest.
Okay, that is fantastic. Cool. I'm going to ask you something here off the cuff here, and those 5 steps, I'd like to have those captured somewhere for our listeners.
Absolutely.
So after the show, will you make sure that that's available on paulmontelongo.com? I mean, give it to me or our social media team.
I will, absolutely.
And so that all of our listeners can access that, because what you just said there, I think is like that's crucial. Like that's very, very valuable, the way that we program ourselves for success, because we are programmed.
Yeah.
Is this correct? We are programmed one way or the other.
Whether we like it or not. We're programmed with what to wear, what to drive, how much we're worth, who we're supposed to be with, all that stuff.
Okay, right.
And you can change it.
So if we're gonna be programmed, may as well program
something
ourselves
cool,
for success.
something fun,
Cool.
something you like. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like that a lot. All right, so let's go back to this negotiation, these meetings that we're in, a sales call, a negotiation, some kind of crucial meeting that we're determining we want good results from. Okay, somebody's on the other side of the table. How do we determine if they're lying to us?
Okay,
because I've just heard, I'm just saying that there are people out there in the world that will lie to you in a sales environment.
Paul, this is groundbreaking. What?
Yes, I read it somewhere on the internet that somebody might lie to you in a sales environment, okay? So how do we know if that person on the other side of the table is being truthful with us or not?
Okay. Great question. And this technology that I'm about to share is actually taught at the law enforcement training centers of the United States, and realize that federal law enforcement, and realize that there are about 90 different agencies. You get the FBI, CIA, plus a lot more you've probably never heard of. They are all trained with this technology that I'm about to share. I didn't create it. It's from neurolinguistic programming. But if they believe it, if the federal government believes in it and teaches it, it's what the agents are using, then I think it's worthy of learning. And it's very simple. You're looking at someone's eyes and which way they're looking when you're talking with them. So we know from research and experience that when someone is looking to the upper right, that means that they are creating something visual. So if I were to ask someone to think about what the Statue of Liberty looks like with a pink dress on. The Statue of Liberty doesn't have a pink dress. They would have to create that in their mind.
I just looked up to the right.
Okay, there you go.
And you saw a pink dress?
I did. I saw her green with a pink dress.
Sorry to put that image in your mind. It could have been a lot worse, though. All right. So that means they're creating something visual. They don't have a reference for that. They've got to create it in their minds.
Is that a positive or negative visual image? if I'm looking up to the right?
Depends what you think about.
It's neutral. It's neutral. So far, everything's neutral.
Okay.
I'll explain how it gets positive or negative soon. That's a
All
great
right.
question. Now, if I ask you to remember something that you have actually seen, you will look up and to the left because you will be remembering something visual. So up and to the right is creating something. Up and to the left is remembering something. Same with auditory. If I ask you to remember something you've heard, then you will look straight over to your left. If you're creating something that you haven't heard, like the Rolling Stones singing a Madonna song, for example, you will look off to the right, straight off to the right. So now I can ask you questions. Where were you on the night of the 14th? You know, what did you see? Well, if you're looking up and to your right, you're creating it. You're creating something that you didn't actually see.
Wow.
You know, what did you hear that night? If you look over and to the left, I know you're remembering something that you heard. If you look over and to the right, you're creating something that didn't happen.
Fascinating.
Wow.
Yep.
So when we're in that negotiation or in that meeting and we're paying attention to the eye movement
Watch
of
where
the
they
other
go.
person, we can tell creating a story, maybe lying to me,
Right.
or being factual. They're telling me the truth in this particular question or scenario.
Yes, and the only caveat is some people are oppositely oriented, so you have to go ahead and test ahead of time. Go ahead and make sure it's calibrated. Ask them questions you know the answer to, and look for where their eyes are going. Once you have that set, then you can start asking questions. Where were you on the night of the 14th? Or what are the contents of this contract?
And law enforcement uses this all the time.
Yes, absolutely. So if you're ever in a situation where federal law enforcement asks you a question, just look straight ahead.
Have a poker face, poker eyes.
Or wear shades. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
They won't let you wear
Right.
shades.
He's Steve G. Jones. She's Heather Vale Goss. I'm Paul Montelongo. This is the Paul Montelongo Get a Grip Business Radio Show. When we come back, we're going to talk about whether or not the science of influence and this hypnotherapy sticks. We're also going to talk about a little bit more about business, and also we'll have our segment on I'm Sexy and I Know It. We'll be right back.
Intriguing.
Finally, a business show that isn't boring. This is Get a Grip Business Radio. Here again, your host, Paul Montelongo.
Let's get it started. Let's
Welcome back, Paul Montelongo, Get a Grip Business Radio here in Las Vegas. Live sunny afternoon in Las Vegas, AM 1230. KLAV in Las Vegas. Listen to us live streaming on the internet, paulmontelongolive.com. I've got some tweets and I've got some Facebook messages, and one of those we'll answer in a moment here, and that is, does this hypnotherapy stick? Is it permanent? But before we go to that, the sixth myth of selling is sales is a dead-end career with little promotional opportunity. I can't tell you how many people I hear that say, I'm just not a salesperson. Sales are not for me. I just can't do sales. It's like they go into this whole idea of it, they're with fear, right? And that it's not the opportunity for them.
Yeah, I think a lot of that's also tied in with people have this mindset that they don't like salespeople. They don't like being sold. So therefore, they don't want to be one of those people.
Right. The best thing that I can tell you on that is, look, we're all selling all the time. We're selling an idea. We're selling a concept. Some are selling widgets. Some are selling services, right? If you're a parent and you tell your children they need to be in bed at 10 o'clock, you're trying to sell them on the idea that they better be in bed at 10 p.m.
Yeah.
It's sales, right?
And if you're in a relationship, you're selling yourself to them.
Precisely. So that's all just influence and the psychology of influence and
Absolutely.
persuasion, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the questions that came across social media was, does this hypnotherapy stick? Right. So if we're going to influence ourselves, if we're going to persuade ourselves to be successful, to go through the ups and downs, or program ourselves, if you will, to have a successful negotiation in a sales environment or any kind of leadership role or whatsoever. So we've done that, or we've worked with someone like you. Does it stick? I mean, is it permanent?
Okay, and again, I'm going to give you the Dr. Steve G. Jones answer from my academic training, which is that it's multifactorial. It really depends on the individual, the hypnotherapist, what you're working on, what their preconceived notions were. I like what Tony Robbins says, because he kind of equates hypnotherapy to tuning a piano, and he says, every now and then, if you're playing the piano often enough, you've got to retune it. You've got to have someone come in and make sure it's still playing, make sure E is still E and E minor is still E minor. that happens in some cases. You need a little booster every now and then. That's why a recording is great, because if you start to slump a little bit, you can get your confidence back or whatever it is you're working on when you need it. So you don't have to, like initially when I have someone listen to a hypnosis recording, I like to have them listen to it for 21 nights in a row. But after that, it's not
Is
necessary.
21 the magic number? I hear that number a lot. Is 21 the magic number?
We do, and it's not, as far as I can tell from the research, it's not written in stone, but it seems to be a good enough guess at the average
to
number
create a new habit.
Right, exactly.
So if 21's good, 30 must be better.
Well, yeah, 30 is kind of overkill. You don't need to do it because then
I don't need to be that good.
well, you become dependent upon.
I want to be good, but not quite that good. All right, go ahead.
You don't want to feel that you're dependent upon anything like that. So you want to use it and get rid of it as soon as possible. Just realize it's in your subconscious mind because it can become a crutch at that point. So you bring it back if you need it. Maybe 6 months out, you start to slump a little bit. Just listen to a recording for 3 nights in a row as a kind of a booster shot. But our studies for smokers, for example, we studied them 6 months out and a year out by follow-up survey, and we found that over 98% of them are still non-smokers. And that's an easy one to quantify. It's either yes, you're smoking, no, you're not. So we know from that hypnotherapy has a high degree of longevity.
In the world of smoking.
Yes, which is very, very challenging when you think about it.
Okay.
To get someone to stop smoking.
All right, great. So just out of curiosity, what other areas in life, we'll just step outside the business world here for 30 seconds.
Okay.
What other areas of life do you find this science of influence and the science of hypnotherapy really, really beneficial? You said smoking.
Right.
I can clearly see that. You said weight loss earlier. Yep. I can clearly see that. Any other areas that just really stand out as highly successful and beneficial?
Okay, anything in which the subconscious mind is involved. So fear of flying is a big one. People
Really?
are afraid. Yeah, I myself, after 9/11, I didn't fly for a year until I made a hypnosis recording for myself. And then I started offering it to other people because they wanted it. So certain things can really influence you, and you've got to undo them. It's things like nail biting, things like getting better grades, having a better memory, just being more confident in general, believing in the concept of abundance, which is just you taking advantage of opportunities that already present themselves, but realizing that you're worthy of doing that. So it has a lot of applications. And the other stuff we talked about, the influencing, helps in office settings. You know, I need to establish rapport with clients. I've got a very small amount of time to do that, usually an hour or less. So I can use some of my techniques for their benefit to establish rapport so that they are comfortable working with me.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about something like improving memory, what if the memory loss is due to something physical like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's?
Okay.
Or a car wreck or something.
Yeah.
Right. If we've got a physiological component to it, oftentimes it's psychosomatic. In fact, I was talking to a doctor at Cedars-Sinai about a week ago, and he said that through giving a lady truth serum and getting her to talk about experiences in her past, they were able to actually relieve multiple sclerosis. She had all the symptoms of that,
Wow.
and they were gone. The papers touted it as something that was part of therapy, but actually it was based on this. So you can do a lot. However, when it has a physiological component to it, I would talk to a medical doctor. I always like to have the blessing of a medical doctor, the signed consent before I work with any patient in a realm like that.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I want to make sure that our audience knows how they can get more resources from you. I think that's the only fair and equitable thing to do here. So you can go to stevegjones.com.
Yes.
And it's a fascinating website with thousands of resources.
9,000.
Audio recordings.
9,000 recordings.
Reports. How many books? 25 books you've written or
Right,
something
yes,
like that?
and
Okay.
still writing. We've got a free recording for you, free recording on building wealth and believing your wealth opportunities when you go to the website and sign up.
Great. Okay, so that's stevegjones.com. Go there and you can see more of Steve's work. And so now we're going to go to a segment that I call I'm Sexy and I Know It.
I'm sexy and I know it. I'm sexy and I know it.
All right, this is a segment I call I'm Sexy and I Know It, and I discuss people in the world, people in the news who are sexy and they know it. And so this week, since I'm a really big golf fan, I'm following the Masters golf tournament religiously. I have it streaming on my computer. I have it on the TV. I'm listening to it all day long. And there are some Masters players who are sexy and they know it. Fred Couples, 53 years old. He fired a 4 under par yesterday at the Masters. 53 years old. He's playing in a game with a bunch of 30 and 35-year-olds. He's sexy and he knows it.
But 53 is not old.
Of course not. Of course not.
The older I
53
get,
is the
yes.
prime age. Let me
Exactly.
say that. Tiger Woods, Tiger Woods is sexy and he knows it.
Uh-oh, controversy.
because-
Tiger always has been sexy and
right.
knew it.
You may have known it too well.
Tiger Woods
Exactly.
because he's in the best position he's been in years to win his 5th green jacket. And he's also sexy and he knows it for saying in his latest Nike ad, winning takes care of everything. Man, people just forgive the guy, right? When he wins
Nike hired him
when
again?
he wins a few tournaments,
Yeah,
right?
I didn't know
He's
that.
a good golfer.
And then finally from
Give
the
him that.
Masters tournament, the master player that's sexy. He doesn't know he's sexy yet, but he's gonna be sexy real soon.
You predicted it.
And that is Guan Tianlang from China. 14 years old. He's in the 8th grade, and I haven't checked the update here during the show, but he stands to make the cut. He shot a 73 yesterday, the youngest player ever to play in the Masters golf tournament. So I suspect that one day he's going to be really, really sexy, and he knows it.
He's on
Who
the
else
way.
is sexy and they know it? The Rolling Stones. They're sexy and they know it because they're set out on a new concert tour. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are 69 years old.
Wow.
69 years old. They sexy and they know it.
But they have a young mindset. That's how they can do that.
That's because they probably programmed themselves with
They
pre-recorded.
probably did. Yeah.
You know, I heard that Tiger Woods' father, allegedly, Tiger Woods' father took him to a hypnotherapist early on.
I wouldn't.
Oh,
I
nice.
wouldn't doubt it at all. Right. So I've read too that he's heavy into meditation and
Nice.
that kind of thing. So of course that's all just programming in a
Absolutely.
concentrated way.
It's a mind
and
game.
finally, this last story is just so fascinating, and this is a story of a woman from Michigan.
I am on the road again. There I am up on the stage. Here I
Evie
go.
Brannon was in a coma for 5 years. When she came out of the coma in June of 2011, she threw her hands up in the air and she says, the first thing she said when she came out of the coma is, I want to go see a Bob Seger concert. So yesterday, she attended a Bob Seger concert and she met Bob Seger. After being in a coma for 5 years, first thing she said is that she wants to go see a Bob Seger concert. So 79 years old,
Wow.
Evie
Wow.
Brannon.
Welcome
so
back.
congratulations. Welcome back.
Yeah.
She's sexy and she knows
Absolutely.
it, right? All right. So that's our segment on Sexy and I Know It. So I want to also thank Steve Jones here, Steve G. Jones. Go to stevegjones.com and check out his resources. You've been a wealth of information. Will you come back again?
Absolutely, Paul.
Great. I think this is a good subject for our
And
listeners. And our guest co-host, Heather Vale Goss, thank you very much for being here.
Well, thanks for
Appreciate it.
having me. It's been
And,
fun.
Yeah. And so this show, we covered sales, motivation. We covered who's lying to you and who's not.
I like it.
And remember, you can get the replay at paulmontelongolive.com. There'll be resources for you from today's show there. And we will see you again next week on the Paul Montelongo Get a Grip Radio, business radio show. Paul Montelongo Get a Grip Business Radio. Take great care. Closing comments. Great show. Steve G. Jones, great interview, great guest. I really, really enjoyed having him. Great insight and wealth of knowledge. And my guest host here. Wow. My guest host. My guest host. My host guest host.
West Coast.
West Coast.
West Coast, guest coast.
That's right, Heather Vale Goss. Hopefully we'll be together even more. Okay? So you guys take great care. Thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next week. I'm sexy and I know it.